All right, so today we're really diving deep into Steven Pressfield's The War of Art, right?
Yeah.
And you're interested in really understanding creativity and motivation better. Specifically, I think you mentioned this whole idea of resistance that Pressfield talks about, right?
Yeah. It's a really common thing. It's a book that I think um, really connects with anyone who's ever felt like stuck or just blocked
Yeah.
when they're trying to pursue their passion, which I'm guessing is, probably most of us at some point.
Totally, yeah. And what I really love about Pressfield's approach is how, he just tackles this universal struggle head on, right? So for everyone listening, think about a time where you had that burst of inspiration. Maybe you were gonna write a novel or launch a business or even just finally organize your kitchen.
And then life happens,
Yeah.
or should we say
Oh,
resistance?
there it is.
That's exactly it. See,
Yeah.
that's what Pressfield wants us to realize. This isn't just, oh, I'm procrastinating or I'm lazy. It's a force, an invisible enemy that actively works against you, tries to sabotage your creative impulses and everything you're trying to do.
Okay. Invisible enemy sounds kind of dramatic, right? Can you give me a real life example of what this resistance actually looks like?
Okay, well, think about all those seemingly harmless distractions that you find yourself turning to whenever you're avoiding something challenging, right?
Like one of those.
Exactly. Like you sit down to write and suddenly checking your email for the 100th time seems incredibly important. Or that new season of your favorite show just magically appears on Netflix the second you decide to tackle that big project. That, my friend, is resistance in action.
Oh, wow. So you're saying it's not just me being easily distracted. It's like this, insidious force is actually pulling the strings.
Exactly. And, Pressfield uses the word insidious for a reason.
Yeah.
He describes it as invisible, internal, implacable, basically. A super relentless opponent that's always there, constantly whispering doubts in your ear and urging you to take the easy way out, the path of least resistance, even if it means, you're going further and further away from your actual goals.
Man, so then how do we fight back against something we can't even see? How do we actually win this war against this resistance?
Well, that's where this whole concept of turning pro comes into play.
Yeah.
No, I don't mean that we all need to quit our day jobs and become, professional artists or anything like that, although, hey, for some people that might be the dream. But he's really talking about a fundamental shift in mindset.
Okay, so then what does it actually mean to turn pro in the face of this resistance? What sets that mindset apart?
It's about showing up consistently like you're a pro athlete, showing up for practice every single day no matter what. Pressfield talks about Somerset Maugham, the writer, who famously said that he writes when inspiration strikes, but conveniently it strikes at 9 o'clock every morning.
Okay.
It's about discipline over motivation, forcing yourself to show up for the work, even when every fiber of your being is telling you, no, not today.
That's such a good point. It's like we don't wait for inspiration. We have to create the conditions for it to show up. It's like showing up for a date. Even if you're not feeling super sparkly, sometimes just the act of getting ready makes you feel better.
I like that.
Yeah.
And that actually ties into another important trait of what Pressfield calls the professional, which is focusing on the work itself, not on getting external validation. I mean,
Yeah.
think about it. If you start out, let's say, early in your career and you get really hooked on positive comments and all those likes, then what happens when a project doesn't get that same reaction? It can be, honestly, crippling.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Chasing those likes, the validation, that's just a recipe for creative whiplash.
Instead of chasing validation, a professional, they just focus on mastering their craft, on constantly honing their skills, and then they let the work speak for itself.
No, it's more of a marathon, not a sprint, right? It's about the long game.
Yeah,
Those athletes who train for years, often, kind of behind the scenes, all for that one moment, right? To shine on the world stage.
precisely. And just like an athlete, a pro understands that setbacks are going to happen. It's inevitable. They kind of embrace failure, actually see it as just part of the process, right? Like using it as fuel to learn and grow.
That's something I think we don't talk about enough. The importance of failure. We see it as the opposite of success. But what if, it's actually a stepping stone?
Exactly. Pressfield actually argues that the more resistance we come up against, the more we're probably on the right track. Because it means we're pushing past our comfort zones, venturing into the territory where, our greatest work lives.
Mm.
It's dormant, but it's there.
Okay, territory. That's another concept from the book that really stood out to me. Can you unpack that a little bit for our listeners? What does he mean by territory?
Basically, think of territory as your creative domain, right? It's
Hmm.
your unique space of passion and purpose. It's not about like specific genre or medium, but more about that sweet spot where, where your skills and your interests kind of intersect.
So for you, it might be this like analyzing and breaking down these complex ideas, but for someone listening, it could be writing poetry or building furniture or even like coming up with a new marketing strategy, you know? It's about finding that place where you feel most alive and lit up.
Exactly. And what I find really fascinating is that Pressfield sees this whole territory thing as having this like deeper connection. It's um, almost mystical.
Okay, here's where things get a little woo-woo for me. I have to admit, this is the part of the book where I'm like, wait, is he talking about like actual angels and muses here?
Well, he does use that language, yes.
Eh.
But even if you're not really into all that mystical stuff, there's still a really valuable metaphor here. Think about those moments when, like, an idea just pops into your head out of nowhere, or when you stumble on the perfect solution to a problem just when you need it most.
Oh, I've totally had those moments, like that flash of insight when you're out for a run or in the shower, you know.
Exactly. And Pressfield would say those aren't just random coincidences. They're glimpses into this other realm, what he calls the higher realm, this source of, creativity, pure inspiration. That's always available to us if we just know how to tap into it.
Okay, so how do we tap into this higher realm? Are we talking like meditation, chanting, special crystals, asking for a friend?
Pressfield actually thinks it's way simpler than that. He believes the key is to just, well, start. Just take that first step and really commit to the work. He quotes this guy, W.H. Murray, who said, "The moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves too."
I love that quote. It's like the universe is just waiting for us to make the first move to prove we're serious about this thing, you know?
Exactly. Pressfield calls it a conspiracy of support that pops up whenever we get in line with, like, our true purpose. It's as if the universe itself is actually conspiring to help us succeed when we finally pursue our authentic calling.
So it's not just about like willpower and discipline, it's about tapping into like a deeper well of energy and inspiration, right?
Uh-huh.
Something bigger than ourselves, which is both kind of empowering and humbling at the same time.
It is. And that's exactly why Pressfield stresses how important humility is in this whole creative process. Because it's about recognizing that we're not totally in control. We're not solely responsible for every little thing. We're really more like co-creators working with something much larger than ourselves.
So by showing up, doing the work, and just, I guess, surrendering to the process, we're opening ourselves up to this higher realm, this source of like unlimited creativity.
Exactly. And this is where his whole thing about invoking the muse is really interesting.
Mm.
He actually like recites a prayer from Homer's Odyssey every time before he sits down to write. It's
Yeah.
his way of inviting inspiration into his process.
Okay, I have to admit, picturing this like hardened screenwriter reciting ancient Greek poetry to summon his muse, it's kind of hilarious and also strangely inspiring. But I think I get it. It's about approaching that creative process with a sense of reverence, right? Like acknowledging that there's something bigger at play here than just our ego and our ambition.
Exactly. It's about surrendering to the process, trusting that we're not alone in this journey. And I think that's such a powerful message, regardless of whether you believe in actual muses or not.
Totally. It's about tapping into that flow state, that feeling of being totally in the zone where the work just flows through you, you know? We've all experienced it, and man, it is exhilarating.
Absolutely. And that's really what Pressfield is getting at here. By aligning ourselves with our true purpose, embracing that mindset of the professional and surrendering to the creative process, we tap into a source of energy, a source of inspiration that is incredibly powerful and deeply fulfilling.
So it sounds like this battle against resistance, it's not just about like producing great art. It's about something much, much deeper, right? It's about this like deeper alignment with our authentic selves, with our true purpose in the world.
Yes. And that leads us to what I believe is the most profound takeaway from the war of art. If our lives really are our art, like Pressfield suggests, what does it look like to approach them, our lives, with that same dedication, passion, and commitment?
Oh, yeah, that's a big question, but a necessary one, right? If we really want to live lives full of purpose and meaning.
Absolutely. And I think it starts by asking ourselves those tough questions. What's my territory?
Mm.
What am I truly passionate about? What would I be doing even if nobody was watching, even if I never achieved fame or fortune?
Such powerful questions. And then once we've like sat with those, it's about, taking action, showing up consistently, trusting that the universe, whatever that means to you, will meet you halfway.
Exactly. And that's where the magic happens. When we go from, just thinking about it to actually creating, from
Yeah.
dreaming to doing. That's how we unlock our true potential. That's how we step into our power.
It's about turning pro, not just with our creative side, but in life, period. Showing up as the best versions of ourselves day after day and realizing that, you know what, our lives really are these amazing works of art.
You know what? When you put it like that, this whole war with resistance, it doesn't seem quite as daunting anymore. It becomes less about fighting and more about just aligning. Less about struggling and more about surrendering to the flow, to the creative flow of life.
Oh, I love that. It's not about conquering, it's about connecting.
Yeah.
But we've thrown a lot of big ideas at everyone today. What are some key things we can leave our listeners with? So, just to recap everything we talked about, there's this whole idea of resistance as that thing that's holding us back. And to deal with it, we have to turn pro, which you said means showing up for our craft consistently, right? But then what's it all for? What's the point of fighting this resistance thing? That's where I guess this whole territory idea comes in and this higher realm thing, right?
Yeah, so it's like this. Imagine you're a gardener, okay? But you're not taking care of a plot of land. You're actually working on your inner landscape. You're cultivating your territory. And just like with a real garden, there are all these forces at play that, well, you can't really control, right? The sun, the rain, the nutrients, and the soil. You get what I mean?
Okay, so are you saying that the higher realm is like the sun and rain for our creative gardens?
Exactly. When we're really in tune with our work, with what we're meant to be doing, we're tapping into this wellspring of energy and inspiration. It's always there, but we have to, do our part. We have to create the right conditions for it to grow.
Mhm.
And we do that by, well, showing up, putting in the work, and honestly, just trusting the process.
So just having a vision, dreaming big dreams, that's not enough. We have to actually get our hands dirty in the creative soil, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. And the coolest thing is when we do that, when we stop overthinking and just create, something kind of magical happens, we connect with this deeper part of ourselves, our authentic self,
Yeah.
the part that just knows what it's supposed to be doing.
It's like we're uncovering our own inner genius
Right.
one step at a time. And it's not about being what someone else thinks is successful. It's about stepping into your own brilliance.
Exactly. That's when our most powerful work emerges. From that place of real authenticity, of being in tune with our own, territory, as Presso calls it.
Mhm.
And what's so great is that anyone can experience it, no matter what they're passionate about.
I think that's what's so awesome about Pressfield's message. It's this call to action, but for everyone, anyone who's ever felt like they had all this potential, like they were meant to do something meaningful with their life.
He's reminding us that, yeah, this fight against resistance, it's tough, but it's worth it. And it's not even about becoming some huge success. It's about self-discovery, about finding your purpose and then, sharing your gifts, your own unique talents with the world.
It's like this. It's about turning pro not just in our creative endeavors, but in life itself, right? It's about showing up every day as the best versions of ourselves and realizing that, yeah, our lives really can be these amazing works of art.
And on that note, maybe that's the question we leave everyone with today. If your life was a masterpiece, a work in progress, what would you create today?
Love it. Well, that wraps up our deep dive into the war of art. Such a good one. Thanks for listening, everyone. Until next time, remember, the resistance is real, but you know what else is real? Your potential. So go create something incredible.